Hi, it's Maria from Still Dreaming Homestead. Glad you're back with me. Sorry the picture's not very clear tonight. I'm not sure what the camera's doing. But if you remember from yesterday, DJ was caught buried alive in that big mudslide. So let's see what's going to happen next. Chapter 12, The Other Side of Nothing. Oh, and here's just the little picture I show every day. This is from the book The Hermit of Mad River. DJ fought against inner panic. He instinctively reached out both arms in a swimming motion, trying to get control. He managed to pull his left arm back where it was imprisoned against his body. The right arm was thrust out and upward, but DJ couldn't pull it back because the crushing cocoon of mud. He couldn't tell where his right hand was. It had no feeling. He held his breath and kicked in a desperate drive upward towards air and light. Instead, DJ found himself being held down. He tumbled around slowly like a wet towel in his stepmother's glass door washing machine. He felt his body weakening. I'm dying. The thought hit him with the force of a baseball bat across the nose. Immediately, he shook off that idea. DJ had heard that the lives of people dying flashed before their eyes. DJ's own thoughts flickered like a strobe light, one after another, as fast as they seemed to blend into one. I've got to get some air fast. Lord, I don't want to die. All week I hated the Rockers and their dogs. Forgive me, but I'm not mad anymore. Too bad about the brindle and the other dogs. Not their fault. They just weren't trained right. I wonder if Hero's going to make it. If he lives or I die. The Hermit. Those Thurkles might get away from him. And, hey, what was Boo Rocker carrying when the first mudslide hit? DJ tried to hold on to his thoughts, but it drifted away, fragile as a dragonfly's wing. He was starting to lose consciousness. The pressure of the mud felt less crushing now. It didn't bother DJ as much. I'm getting so tired, he thought dreamily. He felt himself drifting into nothingness. It seemed he was looking down on the boy known as DJ Dillon, who was suffocating in a river of mud. Something jarred him so hard, his drilling thoughts were torn away. He felt himself being yanked by his right hand, the one he hadn't been able to feel. As though from a long way off, he felt something moving very fast down from the hand to the arm to the top of his head. On his forehead, his eyes, nose, and mouth, something wet like rain hit his face. Suddenly, he couldn't control his breath anymore. His tortured lungs seemed to explode. He blew out, mightily spewing mud. Instantly, he sucked in a great ragged gulp of air. It was filled with mud that sent him into a fearful coughing spasm. Dimly, still as though from a great distance, DJ heard Boo Knocker's voice. He's alive! Thank God. That was Alfred. DJ tried to open his eyes, but the coughing and gasping took over. Between coughs, DJ sucked in gulps of air. Each breath came easier. He felt cold air on his cheeks. His head cleared with the delight of each new breath. He tried to say, "Thanks, Lord," but it came out as a sobbing sound of pure joy of being able to breathe. The coughing eased. DJ forced his eyes open. He felt tears running down his gritty cheeks. Overhead, the sky was clearing. The sun broke through the retreating clouds. A sunbeam reflected off something high up on the mountain. He recognized it. It was the cross. His eyes turned towards a movement closer to him. "Alfred, is that you?" The words were weak and quivering. Alfred's grin answered him. Then DJ recognized Boo Knocker and Roland. Their faces seemed suspended between earth and sky as they stared down at him. "You done saved my boy's life," Boo said. "I am beholden to you for that. It took a moment for DJ to remember what had happened. Then he pushed himself up to a sitting position. He was surprised to see the mud's power had stripped him of his coat, shirt, and undershirt. DJ felt a strange weight at his waist. He glanced down and saw his belt had trapped pounds of mud around his middle. Absently, the boy began brushing the mud away, his eyes moving on to his feet. He could see his boot prints where they'd been dragged up from the residue of mud into a small rocky ledge in the middle of a smelly patch of mountain misery. The ugly brown trail, a few inches thick, showed the meadow to where the mud wall had poured over the canyon rim toward the river. DJ looked at the rockers and Alfred. They were almost as muddy as DJ. "Thanks," DJ said. Then he frowned, remembering. "How'd you find me?" "Boo saw your right hand sticking up," Alfred said. Squatting to look his friend in the face, DJ turned his eyes upon the long-haired man. "You pulled me out? I owed you for saving Roland. Besides, they helped." Boo nodded at his son and Alfred. Roland added, "The mud carried you back against the mountain here. When the slide started going over the canyon, the mud got shallow real fast. That's when Pop saw your hand." DJ swallowed hard. "I'm eternally thankful." "Let's get you home," Boo Rocker said. DJ straightened up. "Yeah, I've got to check on Hero. Maybe he's okay by now." DJ turned to look at Alfred and the rockers and suddenly remembered something. "Hey, I almost forgot. The Hermit's holding the Thorkels for the sheriff. They framed him into going to jail for threatening to blow up the dam. We've got to get to a phone." DJ got weakly to his feet, surprised at how sore he felt all over. He glanced down and saw dozens of cuts and bruises mixed with mud and that was starting to harden on his body. Spurred by the need to call the sheriff for Mr. Ziering, DJ forced himself to start moving. Then, abruptly, he stopped and stared across the two muddy meadows. Alfred asked, "What's the matter?" "I was thinking," DJ replied, seeing something in his mind, a picture of something that had happened just before the first mudslide hit. What?" Alfred insisted. DJ frowned and shook his head. I don't know." "Something, oh, yes, of course. They didn't do it." "Who didn't do what?" Alfred asked. "The Thorkels. They didn't plant the dynamite so the Hermit would get blamed." "They didn't?" Alfred asked in surprise. "Then who did?" DJ didn't answer. His thoughts leaped furiously for something he couldn't quite pin down. DJ saw the rockers exchange glances, but he didn't pay much attention. His memory flashed back to when he'd first seen the rockers approaching the big meadow with his 3 dogs. They had charged toward DJ and Alfred, who had been carrying something he dropped when the first small mudslide raced up behind them. Roadside flares. That's what DJ had thought. Now he knew better. Boo said softly, "You done figured it out finally, ain't you?" "Figured out what?" Alfred demanded. "Nothing," DJ said, his mouth suddenly dry from fear. "I see it in your eyes," Boo said. "Well, go ahead and spit it out. In case you done saved my boy's hide, and I'm not gonna hurt you none, nor your friend." DJ hesitated, his mind still whirling. He glanced at Roland. He was a muddy mess with globs of sticky brown stuff clinging to his long hair. "You heard my pop," Roland said. "Tell us." DJ nervously cleared his throat. "Weren't those sticks of dynamite you were carrying when the first slide caught you?" Roland stirred uneasily, but his father laid a restraining hand on the boy's arm. "Sure was." "You know what we was going to do with them, don't you?" DJ nodded slowly. "I think so." "What fooled me was that I thought Thad Thorkel and his father were the ones," Alfred demanded. "What are you talking about, DJ?" He didn't answer because something else didn't make sense. His mind seemed to have grasped a truth only to have it ripped to shreds a moment later. Besides, wasn't he taking too great a risk to voice his wild thoughts that were zipping through his mind? "Well, go on," Bo insisted. DJ tried to slow his ideas, to sort them out. He was still foggy-brained from being buried alive in the mud. But as his mind slowly cleared, he spoke. "You were the ones who tried to get the Hermit blamed for the bomb threats." Alfred exclaimed. "DJ, what are you saying?" Roland demanded. "What makes you say that?" DJ frowned, still trying to piece together things right, but they didn't quite fit. "It's only a guess," DJ admitted. "I think you found that Thad's coat button and deliberately left it at the Hermit's when you planted the dynamite the sheriff deputies found." "Ha, a lot you know," Roland said. "Shut up," the father snapped. "Let DJ go on." DJ hesitated, feeling terrible about what he was thinking, knowing that the rockers had just saved his life. It was an awful predicament for DJ. Still, he had to explain. They were seeing the Hermit up on they were setting the Hermit up to take the blame when the dam was finally blown up. On the other hand, you two didn't strike me. DJ stopped uncertainly. The mixed up thoughts flashed and twisted in DJ's mind. Something still didn't make sense, but what was it? Bo asked through muddy caked beard. "What about bailing the old Hermit out of jail?" DJ frowned. "I didn't think you had any money to bail him out, but somehow you must have. Otherwise, Mr. Ziering wouldn't have been free when the dam was ready to blow." The rockers exchanged glances. The father nodded. "That's what you think it is?" DJ went on, his mind tumbling with thoughts he couldn't quite grasp. Then this morning the Thurkels must have gone to tell the old man that they hadn't bailed him out. Maybe to ask him to help find out who really was responsible for the bombing threat. But Mr. Ziering didn't believe them and took them as prisoners. I thought he was right until I saw you coming across the meadow with those sticks of dynamite. What were you going to do? Plant them at the Hermits before you really were ready to blow up the dam and get him blamed? Roland spoke scornfully. You're one smart one, aren't you? Alfred protested. Don't mind him. He's probably a little bit out of his head from almost drowning. DJ interrupted. Of course. He turned to face the Rockers. You didn't have the bail money, so you got it from someone. The Thorkels. Alfred groaned. Oh, DJ. DJ plunged on, seeing things more clearly now. All four of you were in it together, weren't you? It was the Thorkels' idea, but they needed you to help out. And probably they'd later have left you a hold in the bag while they skipped out, clear and free. Boo Rocker sighed slowly. You're right every way. Me and Roland already figured out that them radical environmental people was going to frame us the way they framed the Hermit. But why? Boo shrugged. Money. What else? We met the Thorkels in the woods once. They said they wanted to play a little joke on a friend. The Hermit? DJ guessed. Yep. We was just supposed to put half a box of dynamite in the old man's shack. Wasn't supposed to be dangerous without blasting caps to set it off. So we done it, Roland added. Later, them Thorkels gave us money to bail the Hermit out of jail, plus some extra money for our trouble. Thorkels also hired a lawyer. Boo said, now you figured it out. Well, what are you going to do, seeing as we saved your life? DJ was silent for a long time. He glanced at Alfred, whose wide eyes were behind his thick glasses showed he was totally surprised at the unexpected turn of events. I don't know, he said softly. I'll think about it while we're climbing out here to the phone. The senior rocker pursed his lips thoughtfully. You do that. That's all I ask. You boys go up on that hill. Me and my boy will go off by ourselves. DJ protested weakly. I can't let you do that. How are you going to stop us? Roland demanded. Alfred reached out and touched DJ's bare, muddy arm. You promised your folks you'd let the sheriff handle things, remember? Let him go. DJ told the Rockers, I can't stop you, but the deputies will catch up with you sooner or later. Maybe, Bo said through his muddy beard. Maybe not. We'll take our chances. What do you say? DJ shrugged. What can I say? Except, thanks again for pulling me out of that mud. Well, the DJ was saved. One more chapter. And we're going to read that tomorrow. I hope you've liked this book. It's been so many years since I've read it that I even have forgotten many of the things. So I just want to say I love you. I really do. But more importantly, God loves you and He always will. So whatever you do, keep dreaming, keep a story in your heart. Bye-bye.